What's good? This is Dr. Mario Wallace with third part of this lecture series, which is titled Human Capital Readiness. So I would like to just give you an overview of part one and part two. Part one was about where did the concept of the ADAM strategy management come from, um, how I actually conducted research with over 200 leaders in an academic medical institution who I had taught strategy management and identified four phases uh, that um, that came from the interviews, the qualitative interviews, and one of the phases, leaders showed lack of experience and lack of competency in doing that was the execution phase, and the second phase was the management phase, how to effectively manage a strategy. What we found out in the research was that leaders were very effective in analyzing markets and developing strategic plans. They just were not effective in executing and managing the plan. Thus, the phases, what we call the ADAM strategy management process, came to life. I later published a book and multiple academic articles, research articles on the methodology, and I've used the methodology over 60 times with multiple institutions, and sometimes 10 to 15 times within one institution. Part two was about the strategy map. Again, the ADAM strategy management model identified the elements of strategy management must be done in order to effectively manage strategy within an organization. But the drivers of the model, most of them come from the balanced scorecard methodology. I am a balanced scorecard strategy management practitioner, certified practitioner, thus, and I've used the balanced scorecard on multiple strategic planning sessions. So I really understand how to use it. As you can see in this picture, the whole thing about readiness is a measure of liquidity. It's almost like using a balance sheet to understand how you measure which assets could be converted into liquid cash within a shorter period of time. When you think of human capital, we're talking about the people in the organization. We need to really accelerate what that gap is in readiness, and we call that a measure of liquidity within the organization. So it takes multiple things to get people ready to help execute on a strategic plan. For instance, if a company did things one way for 20 years, then they decide to shift in a total different direction where the company needs new competencies, thus they need to recruit and hire versus training up the existing staff, then that's a situation that leaders have to make to ensure the readiness of the people to execute on the strategic plan. In this example here, you see the lady running towards the stop sign. This is the measure of readiness that has to take place. Is it 30 days? Is it 2 months? Is it 3 months? Is it 5 months? Is it 12 months to get the team ready to execute on the strategy? And we'll show more what readiness look like as we go through the slides. So mastering human capital readiness consists of its ability to know the stock of knowledge and the innate acquired characteristics of each employee and how he or she can contribute to the advancement of the organization's strategic plan to each other's economic productivity. This is only done by evaluating a strategic plan with the intent to identify strategic competencies, align strategic job families, positions within the organization to the strategy, evaluating the competencies of the people, codifying knowledge for transfer, and developing employees so that they can advance the strategic priorities in the organization. So in the previous discussion, lecture, I covered the strategy map. This is the strategy map. Human capital readiness aligns directly with the strategy map, meaning the strategic objectives from the internal processes perspective down. The people in the organization, the strategic job families, and the competencies have to be aligned to these strategic objectives. Leaders in the organization need to understand what does it take to help advance and execute on these strategic objectives, and the people who are directly aligned to these strategic objectives must have the competencies to effectively drive the strategic plan. So let's talk about the activities that must take place to ensure people are ready in an organization. The first one is to evaluate the strategy for the competencies needed to advance it. Second is to identify the competencies, start to draft out what they look like. Identify the positions in the organization, the strategic job families to align to certain specific strategic objectives. Create a competency profile, identify what are the skills, what are the behaviors, and what are the values that these people in these roles based on this strategic objective or that strategic objective must have. Creating an assessment to assess them on the competencies, administer the assessment, develop an incentive plan to incentivize the people based on the work that they will be doing, and coach them accordingly. These steps must take place in order to ensure that your people are ready to execute on the strategy. Let's talk about the strategy map again. When it comes to human capital readiness, at the bottom of the strategy map, we have three types of intangibles. One is human capital readiness, one is technology readiness, and the other one is cultural or organizational readiness. In this lecture, we only want to talk about human capital readiness. So as I have here highlighted two strategic objectives that talks about objectives related to human capital readiness. So from T1, T2 and above, we need to ensure that these competencies exist within the people who we're hiring into our organization or people who are currently in our organization have in order to execute on the strategic objectives within the strategic plan. So let's talk about it. So you must go through a thorough human capital readiness process, starting with the internal processes. As you can see at the top, where it says strategic things, we have business unit focused and staff focused. These are the strategic objectives within the business unit focus and the staff focus perspective within the strategy map. You must align the strategic job families to the actual strategic objectives. Here, align HR planning with institutional strategy. We're saying that organizational consultants need to do that. Provide proactive workforce solutions. We're saying that the human resources business partners need to have the skill as well as shared services to do this work. P3, ensure a strategy-focused organization. We're back to organization development consultants and human resources business partners, as well as P4 and P5. P5, we have an additional team, 2 teams. We have talent acquisition and benefits need to be a part of those strategic objective. Then we need to identify the competencies. So what are the competencies that these strategic job families would need to execute on those strategic objectives? This is a thorough process and it must be done in order to help execute and advance the strategy. When this is not done, this is one of the main reasons why strategies fail and or why strategies or strategic plans are placed on the shelf within 6 to 12 months. Now, we have to identify the number of people associated with each strategic job families because we have to train and educate them on these particular competencies, or just assess them on those competencies. And once we assess them on those competencies, we will identify the percent of people who are ready to help execute on the strategic plan. Right? As you can see within the first, we have 10 people aligned to the left as it relates to P1 at the top. If you can see my cursor here, as you go down, 10% of these 10 people were ready. So the color is red. Next to it, the 50 people, 80% of the 50 people are ready to execute on the strategy. Color is green. As it relates to the next one to the right, 65%, 50% of 65% of the people are ready, and so forth. we need to understand, and you need to understand, how many of the people in the organization who are aligned to specific strategic objectives are ready to help execute on those plans before you actually go into executing the strategy. Hope this is clear for you. As it relates to the actual assessment, this is a high level assessment for a strategist in the organization. As you can see here, one side of it to your left, you have self-assessment. The other side is manager assessment. Basically, people go through this assessment. You take the competencies identified, populate the document with the competencies and the skills, and you have the employee to rank in him or herself, or rate him or herself as it relates to these competencies. As you can see at the bottom, E stands for can teach others, W stands for well-rounded, can fly alone, and L stands for limited and may need support. They go through this document, this assessment, and determine where they think that they fit as it relates to the legend. But then the manager, who that person reports to, actually conducts the same assessment on that individual too. They negotiate and agree to the areas of improvement, and then they develop a developmental plan for execution. So if you need to connect with me, I am located on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Peace.